Hello, friends. Hello, hello. I forgot to mention last week that tonight, which is actually tomorrow night because I'm using the power of technology tonight. Um, Today's Wednesday, but tomorrow for Connecting for Recovery, I will be at a celebration for one of our top networking partners. I want to go, actually, it's a cookout, and take my family and celebrate the Dilworth Center. So I will be there Thursday night for Connecting for Recovery. So I wanted to come on and do a recording for you guys for a meeting in case anyone is in need. So I had another request last week. I mentioned I had a few, and I wanted to speak into some identification, or no, that's not the right word. Some awareness around how excitement shows up for an adult child and how contentment might show up and the relationship between the two. If you've heard me talk about addiction before, I want to reinforce that addiction is a form of coping. It's how we try to self-soothe when we are trauma survivors. The problem with that definition, because it's an amberism, is not everyone identifies as a trauma survivor, or not everyone recognizes that the experience they had is considered trauma. So real quick, Cliff Notes version. Trauma isn't just about what happened to me. It's also about what I didn't get that I needed. And so while some people minimize, well, I'm fine because I had food in the fridge and the power was on, they don't necessarily always recognize neglect. And I think for some people, it can also be justified what can be considered abuse for others. That was just a form of parenting at that time, or that was just my generation. Remember, the definition of trauma is it is about an experience, not about an event. And it doesn't matter if it's a generational thing or if it's a rule. If my body experiences it as such, meaning there's a lack of safety and powerlessness and cortisol and adrenaline flood my body, it's probably going to be a traumatic event. What makes it long-term and affect my life is when there's no repair. So when we look at addiction, what our culture calls addiction, that is a form of self-soothing. And I know that pisses some people off because maybe some of you are in a current state of healing where you're still struggling with blame or still trying to figure out or understand behavior. Behavior serves a purpose. And I didn't say it was healthy. So when we are suffering, when we are feeling pain, doesn't matter if it's physical pain or emotional pain, when there is a lack of safety in my body, I have to figure out how to self-soothe somehow. And usually that's through process addictions, numbing, medicating, or substances. So some of you, as I've talked about addiction in the past, I've shared that rage can be an addiction. I've also shared that excitement or adrenaline can be an addiction. With either of those two ends of the spectrum, what I want you to think about and remember is we recreate what is familiar. It doesn't mean it's what I want, and it doesn't mean that it's healthy. It does mean that whatever the theme of my childhood was, if it was unpredictability, if it was chaos, if it was high highs and low lows, if it was lots of excitement or lots of busyness, it's gonna be hard for us to live in the gray. Because as you noticed, all of those are opposites. All of those are end of the spectrum. And while it is, sorry, Charlie's having a hard time behind me if you hear that. While excitement doesn't necessarily mean that I have an addiction to it, in its relationship with contentment and how one may affect the other, it could. So remember, whatever is unhealed, I will continue to recreate in my adult life. Not because I want it, but because that's what's familiar. My body and my nervous system knows how to interact with it. And if I'm struggling with feeling excitement, if I'm struggling with feeling joy, or maybe even if I'm struggling with feeling peace, It could be because I'm in a relapse, because I'm numbing and medicating, because I'm stuck in this polarization of all or nothing. And in order to heal, I have to be able to feel. So if I'm continuing to numb and medicate, even unconsciously, I'm probably not going to be feeling, and I'm probably not going to recognize anything as a problem. But when my body starts to suffer consequences for it, when my relationships start to have negative outcomes or consequences, then sometimes I'm able to see it, or my loved ones bring it to my attention. So when it comes specifically to excitement and contentment, it's not that we can't get to a state of contentment. Sometimes, especially if it's a relapse, it's a situation where the toxicity around me is too high and intense that I can't stabilize my nervous system without numbing and medicating. If I'm living in a toxic environment, I'm probably going to need to numb and medicate in order to survive that situation. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's not bad or wrong. That's survival. Survival can't be bad or wrong. It just is. I'm surviving or I'm not. So when you're thinking about contentment and not being able to find peace, or maybe struggling with drama or chaos or unpredictability in your life, it could be because loved ones around you are creating that level of toxicity. And maybe certain things have to happen before you're able to exit, get away, or stabilize your own nervous system. The opposite of that, excitement, if someone is living in excitement or seeking excitement, it's probably a dopamine rush. It's probably a dopamine hit. If we are getting to these places of emotional intoxication, where I'm looking for that adrenaline rush, whether it's picking a fight with my husband or it is jumping out of an airplane, the rush of that is giving me some type of feeling, which is what my body is looking for. Only it's all or nothing. And where we live, where homeostasis is in the gray. The gray is where I can feel the continuum of emotions. The gray is where I can balance my nervous system and recognize what I need versus what I want. And if I'm struggling between excitement and contentment, Amber is saying there's probably something happening that I'm unconscious of or that I'm powerless over. And if I'm powerless as an adult, I'm probably going to need some support to help me figure out how to get out. Many of us as trauma survivors, what we suffer from is powerlessness. And especially if that powerlessness dates all the way back to pre-verbal in utero, sometimes the reason we get stuck is because we literally don't have the neural pathway to know how to get out. Hence the point of therapy. Hence the point of group therapy or workshops, and why we experience other people's story so that it colors options and behaviors in that maybe my brain didn't have. So I hope this was helpful for you. I want to reinforce, just because you're wanting some excitement in your life does not mean that that is an addiction. It is in the relationship with contentment and the inability to feel one, or the inability to feel anything other than one of those. In regards for a tool for this, I love, if you've ever done a workshop with me, the number line. I also love things like breathing techniques, because it is a way that I can support my body physically in getting regulated. Just because I can regulate my body doesn't mean that there's an emotional safety, because if my environment is toxic, I might be struggling to get to that level of safety because my nervous system has to be on to keep me safe. But I can get grounded using things like breathing techniques. I can support my body and my nervous system by coming down and not staying so elevated, dumping the cortisol and adrenaline all the time. I can also release emotions through tears, through walking, through exercising. Anything that exits my body is a form of a release. I know how that sounds. I know. But just know that whether I'm hitting a pillow, crying, screaming, walking, any form of energy in motion releases emotion. So remembering the number line, start plotting where you are on that number line. You can't do it wrong because it's all based on your perception. If you're noticing that it's polarized and you're on either end of the spectrum, you might need some support or some connection to figure out how to get in the middle. Also, breathing techniques, releasing, exercising, connecting is really helpful in getting back in my body. And when I say exercising, I ain't talking about a 5-mile run. I mean like a walk around the block to release some of the energy. If you want to do more than that, knock yourself out. But when I say exercise, I'm using it from a perspective of to release this excess energy in my body. Yeah, so I hope this was helpful for you guys. We can definitely talk more about emotion, but remembering that addiction is a form of self-soothing. And when I get caught in one of these polarized states, it's probably because there's something happening that I can't see yet, or that I need to get grounded, or I need to feel safe in order to see and experience it differently. I hope you guys had a great week. I look forward to seeing you next week, and have a good weekend. Bye, everybody.